discuss. And you can. Great.
There you go. And
Okay,
Alex,
first,
yep,
yes,
go for it.
thank you. First of all, shout out to Ted because he pointed me towards you. Thank you, Ted. I'm Alex from Germany. And yeah, I will tell you something about my thoughts on modern software development. Very individualistic, like very my thoughts. So it's my subjective perspective, and the observations from this 20 years long journey is like this slide deck. It was created, first of all, for students. A professor, or in fact, my boss came to me and said, "Hey, here's a professor. He wants to give us a talk at the university. Alex, can you talk something to the students?" And I said, "About what?" And he said, "Does not matter. You have full green field, and you can decide what you want to talk about." And I said, let me think about it. And with all the stress going on in the project, I found my like 10 minutes thinking about it, and it was, what would be the information that I needed when I started off as a professional software developer. So that was the topic, and it was for students. And after like 6 years of giving that talk, I decided to open it up to a broader range of people, so for software professionals. And I revamped this talk a bit. So here we go. I was born in Hamburg. I'm a hamburger. And I was born in 1975, talking about age and stuff like that. I'll become 50 in like, let me think about it, 4 days, 28th of April. So I studied economics and computer science. It's called Diplom Wirtschaftsinformatiker at the University of Applied Sciences in Lüneburg. That's the northern part of Germany. Right now I'm located in the southern part. This nice lake that you saw on my screen was in fact the Lake Constance where I live. So if you go to the internet, you will find this nice picture of me, not really, but and my homepage can be found on onmoderndev.de. You will find me on Mastodon. I went when Elon decided to put some individual back onto the platform. So there was a huge wave of people migrating towards Mastodon. And I can tell you, please do it. That's a good choice. LinkedIn, really connect with me on LinkedIn. That would be really great. I will be really happy. Xing is a German platform that's not so relevant here in the US. Different positions. What did I do in those 20 years of software development? I always was a software developer. Right now, I'm becoming a consultant. As Steve wrote on Meetup, I'm starting a new journey. Bringing from this talk and a new talk that I'll be pointing you towards at the end of this slide deck. For customers and colleagues, I've been for 20 years a supporter, a consultant, a technical trainer, and I tried to find a word, and I found this word communicator. I did mentoring, I did after-work talks in our company, especially shortly before the Corona pandemic. I started that off, and with the Corona pandemic raging, or whatever you might call that, we sat down at home and we talked about stuff and watched interesting talks, not even only about IT, but what would be interesting to all of us. Also code camps about technical solutions in our company. And I used to be a lecturer, as you heard, and a speaker. And right now I'm a self-employed consultant and speaker, starting off with this journey. My main areas of interest in business is clean code, refactoring, technical debt, and mentoring. So not this greenfield guy, but a brownfield guy, because the greenfield won't be very long in that nice, shiny green car. Private, I read a lot of books. Technological disruption is one of the main topics, but also, yeah, across the board. And current affairs for 28 years. That's a different journey and a different talk. And yeah, possibly I will talk about that at one point in time. So, software development. What are the characteristics? Let's start off. It's a young and dynamic area of expertise. Dan North in 2015 went to the stage for the first keynote of the day, and he said, "How many of your parents have been working in IT?" And from the 1,000 engineers, like 20 hands went up, and he said, could it be that this stuff is new and that we decide how we move on to the future as we go? So it's also inherently complex. If you go to Fred Brooks in 1985, he wrote this great essay, No Silver Bullet, in which he said, we have an inherently complex field here in contrast to simple complicatedness. You can't get out of this complex world. It's inherently in it. According to Brooks, software developers are faced with, first of all, essential complexity. Those are the elements needed in order to describe a given problem abstractly. As pros, we know, hey, that's the domain abstraction. And additionally, and on top of that, you have accidental complexity. Those are the additional elements introduced by the concrete implementation. So your technical solution. If you decide to use the wrong technology, you have a big accident. If you decide the right technology, then you have a small accident. But in fact, it's an accident. It's on top of the essentials. First of all, especially for the students back then, the warning, an anecdote of Twitter. In 2014, Simon Wardley put this to Twitter, and basically this went through the roof. And if you look at this diagram, you have knowledge here, and you have expertise, and then three curves. And at the beginning, you're of course the beginner, and you're in the I know nothing phase. How much you think you know is not that big. How much more I actually know is a different curve. And how much more I realize there is to know is the third curve. So here's the tension. Here's the danger zone. If you're a beginner and you're working through your first projects, your self-esteem explodes. And basically, you think that you know so much. But if you look at the other curves, it's in fact not that much. And after having your nose bloodied, you realize possibly I'm not that clever as I thought. And this curve goes down. And the important thing, and then you, by the way, come back to the I know nothing phase if you're an expert. And the whole thing about our society is that this green curve explodes on the internet or wherever, in the libraries, wherever. And this is a crucial thing. This space here between the curves, how much more I actually know and how much more there is, explodes every day. It is becoming larger and larger and larger, and it puts on some level pressure on you and on your cognition. So when this went through the roof and the people were saying, hey, that's it, that's exactly the thing. He said, hey, guys, this is a joke. This is my stomach talking to you. This is no scientific study or anything. Danger zone. But there is a scientific study, many people know it by now, Dunning-Kruger effect. What they found is that your confidence, this is in the data, that confidence explodes when you're a real beginner, and after that, your nose being bloodied, this confidence is being lowered again. And if you look at the color code on my first page, you will see this color code, and it has happened exactly to me. When I was 3 months into my career as a software developer, I went to the customer for 1 month, and it happened. In time, in budget, everyone happy. Yeah. And I thought, whoa, this is a nice field of expertise. I will be doing this for my whole life. That's the way. And it never happened again. So, color coded. Experience, that of course is the thing that you need to gain in order to sell your knowledge on the market. In real life, be prepared for this. Success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. So Winston Churchill said that, and that was during World War II. So if this guy would have lost his enthusiasm, Europe would be looking completely different today and the whole world. Experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted. And experience is often the most valuable thing you have to offer, as said by Randy Pausch. If you do not know Randy Pausch, you should really go to this link, really achieving your childhood dreams. Back then, when I was at this project that never happened again, my boss sent this link to this talk. And in fact, he was a Carnegie Mellon professor and he held the last lecture of the semester. And what he did first was putting his liver scans on the display and said, this could be really my last lecture because I have last stage cancer, and in 3 months I might be dead, as my doc said. And he delivered a lecture where he said, those are the things that you need to know when you as a student start off into your life and into your career. This is how you achieve real sense in your way of living and your work life. So he lived for a few years longer, I think 3 years. And if you do not know that talk, you should give it a go. By the way, everything that is here as a link or any source is on my homepage. And I also put it in the chat. So there's only one thing more painful than learning from experience, and that is not learning from experience. Who knows the Peter principle? That's the question, and some arms go up normally. The Peter principle says basically, in a large hierarchical structure, you are promoted until you're at your spot of incompetence. He wrote a book about that. And this book was written, I think, at the end of the 60s, before burnout even existed. And he said, there will be bad things happening to people going through this process. If you always say yes and you're promoted from one stage to the other, you will miss the one point in time where you should have said no. And it's really interesting to read that book because it sounds like a scientific study, but in fact, the whole topic on which this book is, hierarchiography or whatever, is not even existing. And if you don't know that it's not existing, you think, scientific, interesting. But in fact, he has his story that he's telling about the dangers of the life you're living if you're going through life without reflecting on it, what you're doing. I read this after my first promotions, and I should have read it really at the beginning of my business life. But yeah, basically, you live, you learn. So when I went through this journey, I came to Andy Hunt's book, Pragmatic Thinking and Learning, Refactor Your Wetware, and that warped my mind a bit. What I saw there was the Dreyfus-Model, a model about continuous learning, and it is key to master your profession, of course. It's about a study. This model was created during the study from novice to expert, excellence and power in clinical nursing practice in the 80s. And funny thing is, my girlfriend is a nurse, and when I read that book, I did not know her. I was saying, hey, that's interesting. But when I learned, when I got to know her, I realized, it's good that we are doing software and not this bloody stuff that the nurses are doing. Because after reading not only pragmatic thinking and learning, but this from novice to expert, the study itself, I realized we are not working with so much blood on our hands as they are. So what is this model about? The Dreyfus model of skill acquisition says that if you're going through some learning, you have 5 phases of this learning. You're a novice, you're an advanced beginner, competent, proficient, and you become an expert. So what is relevant for novices? Clear rules. Experts, they develop intuition, and this is a whole complete different thing. If you're going through this process, your mind will be changing and you will be working with different bases. Second thing that they learned from the data is, as a novice, you consider everything, and as an expert, you have relevant focus. If this very pro programmer looks at some code, I can assure you he does not see the boilerplate. He sees the relevant things, and he has a focus on it, and he can lean on his intuition to go on from there. I've seen that many times. As a novice, you're a detached observer. As a real pro, you know that you're the part of the system. Everything you do and you're not doing changes the system. And one really interesting thing that I got to know additionally on top of this model is some people who not only have intuition and are masters are really far out there with their cognitive capabilities. I've talked to my boss one day, and he had this massive programmer who left the company, and we were talking about what he could achieve with his brains. And he said, yeah, I had some whiskey with him at one party, and he said if he reads code, he sees color-coded bubbles with messages exchanging only by reading the text. And I said, interesting. Interesting is how we make sure that the knowledge that just left the company will be retained in some way. This is one thing that I learned on top. There are people with such cognitive capabilities that you simply cannot compare them to normal roles. So let's go to the details of this model. The definition of experience in this context, as said by Andy Hunt, is exerting a skill that is changing your thinking. You're a different person after you went through this process. Clear rules towards intuition. After that, you're for sure a different person. Novices need context-free rules in order to be able to orient themselves. Experts are able to discern between different contexts and are able to modify their actions accordingly. This does not necessarily happen consciously, remember, instincts and intuition. And the verbalization of how exactly and why exactly can become hard or even impossible for experts because that would resemble a transformation to context-free rules. And by the way, because of that, teaching is a real reality check. And the interesting thing, like tension here is if you put a complete rookie next to a real pro, there will be problems because of this fact that I just talked about. First spoiler of this presentation, machine learning and AI approaches are currently trying to emulate expertise starting from the lowest to the higher levels of expertise in numerous areas of expertise. Implications. Second spoiler, only starting from the second highest level of expertise, a code-producing human is considered to be able to effectively use design patterns. That warped my mind a bit because when I studied, they showed me those great design patterns, and I started to program when I was 26. So, complete rookie. Let's show him things that he only half understands. That's one thing that warped my mind that Andy said there. The same is considered to be true for the fundamental principles of agile software development. For example, continuous feedback and reflection. Citation, the exciting new principles of software development are targeting developers whose experience level is considered to be proficient or expert, the two highest levels. If you put rookies into this place where they need to implement Scrum without major advanced people, let's see what will happen. What I thought then, if you're considering that especially the first teams using agile methodologies successfully were very experienced, what can you deduct from that fact about normal projects? If an organization is distrusting intuition and is instead relying on rigid uniform rules, what can you deduct from that fact, as stated by Andy? You are taking away the most powerful tool of your pros. That's what I learned over the years. This book is really worth the look. This is the table of contents. We were just here, the Dreyfus-Model. So it is journey from novice to expert as a craftsman. He explains how your brain functions. I did, by the way, a workshop, I think 2 years ago. He also offers workshops about this book. It was really good. Get into your right mind. How do you go into this process of coding? What's the best way to basically get into your right mind? What kind of bugs are inside your mind that basically always try to keep you away from being a good programmer? Cognitive biases. We will be talking about that one. How do you learn deliberately? How do you gain experience? How do you manage your focus? I went paddling before work, and he is talking about things like meditation, whatever fits for you. And you got to know yourself in order to learn what really enables you to be a good programmer. And then there's a closing chapter beyond expertise. So cognitive biases, what kind of bugs are existing? What is, first of all, a cognitive bias? It is a systematic pattern of deviation from norm or irrationality in judgment. Individuals create their own subjective reality from the perception of the input. Thus, cognitive biases may sometimes lead to perceptual distortion, inaccurate judgment, illogical interpretation, or what is called irrationality. And that is us humans. Even you as a coder, of course, you're hardwired with those bugs. So now here's the bad information about that. 200 plus, I think it's even 300 plus by now, cognitive biases that distort your perception. And that is a tough one, I can tell you. Why did you go to this business of programming? Because you're, of course, very rational. Here's the bad news. You are not really. This is full of emotions and full of hardwired bugs in your brain. You need to know them in order to have any chance to basically swim with them because they won't be going away. One that I have seen in many, many occasions is one that is located down there, the curse of knowledge. What does it say? The curse of knowledge basically says that you as an expert cannot see or cannot imagine how a non-expert thinks. It's even worse. You can't even imagine how you thought before you became an expert. And in IT, I saw that many, many times, especially with those coders who are very, very capable of doing things like seeing bubbles, communicating arrows between those bubbles and stuff. Another programmer with whom I worked, he basically saw in a short sentence, he pushed between two long sentences was, of course, then Alex, you see the flow in the code. And I said, no, I see only A, B, C, D, blah, blah, blah. And what do you see? Flows in the code. It was Flux API, some Netflix stuff that is not really easy to read. And if you're doing it wrongly, it looks like a mathematical formula. By the way, it is called programming language, not programming calculation. So he saw flows through the code, and a normal coder sees, whoa, cognitive load. That is a certain tension. So if you really want to see something really impressive, this was one of our after work talks that we saw. Fantastic biases and where to find them in software development. He basically themed it like Harry Potter, or the two guys who held that talk. And this is really cool stuff because they take the Scrum process, take the many, many cognitive biases, and try to place the cognitive biases into the process of Scrum. Really good. You should basically watch those slides. It hasn't been recorded, but the slides are really good. So what is software development in the wild? 20 years in the wild, and I can tell you it is very wild. Contradictory requirements. Of course, the quality needs to be the best quality, but we need to be done yesterday. So there, look this as a slider. Where do you want to put your slider? At which point of this slide? Maintainability. Of course, it needs to be maintainable, but time to market, we need to be there yesterday. Of course, if you're a startup, that's relevant. If you're like a very conservative company, you put your slider somewhere else. Concentration and focus versus a very dynamic field with many, many shiny new things. And that is a problem. Where do you put your slider here? How many shiny things and how much cognitive load can you really digest without losing your concentration and your focus? And if you sum it up, you have the model of reality and the reality. Where do you put your slider here? What is a good model? And of course, the reality with the sheer complexity that's in there, that is not the good thing to put into your machine. You need to go for some model. And many more. You could go on forever, I think, with this list. So, better is the enemy of good. They knew that in Italy in 1772. But today, what is good enough in our year of 2025? Factors of influence for you as a human being called coder. Software development in the wild is being implemented in an environment influenced by a multitude of factors. Those are external and internal. Of course, the external stuff is very boring. Budget, project conditions, priorities, you name it. You could go on with many, many gray boxes here. The internal factors, color codes are whatever. Imagination and stressors. Those are the real crucial things that you need to manage as a coder. Your imagination is what enables you to find the good model of the reality to put into your code. And the stressors are your enemy. If the dog lies next to me, if I now stand up and it is 5 a.m. and I step on the dog, he barks and the whole house is awake. My stressors are primed for some action on that day. If you go to the company and you meet some guy who simply says not good morning when you said good morning, there will be different stressors. And every stressor will be eating at your imagination, I can tell you. You need to reduce stressors and you need to find an surrounding where your imagination can flourish. So if you don't believe me, imagination, hey, come on, I'm a software developer and I'm very rational. And of course, I'm programming. So this is the classic. How the customer explained it, something with a tree and 3 wooden things and 2 ropes. How the project leader understood it, yeah, something about 1 woody thing and some tree. How the analyst designed it, yeah, I did not understand. Communication, by the way, is here the problem. I did not really understand what this guy told me, but we did not have time and my stressors were way, way through the roof today. How the programmer wrote it, the poor programmer, after having so much communication loss on the path towards his desk, basically tried his best and this wooden thing lies on the floor. How the business consultant described it, he basically needs to sell. And of course, there's not some wooden stuff. By the way, the wooden stuff is hidden below this chair. How the project was documented, I won't be telling anything about that. There's nothing there. What operations installed, no wooden thing, but some ropey stuff there. How the customer was built, of course. We need to earn our money. How it was supported, let's start. No, done. What the customer really needed was not a wooden thing. It was some tire and with 1 rope. That is communication and fuzziness. So I hope you believe me now. Imagination. We'll be going through this, and this is ironic, a t-shirt that was the best description of my job that I did for 20 years. Programmer, we do precision guesswork, precision, based on unreliable data, guesswork, by the way, based on unreliable data provided by those of questionable knowledge. Let's go through this. There's a lot in here. And I really liked that t-shirt when I saw it. So let's go for the first one, precision. As of today, computer programming requires unsparing precision. Most humans, again a spoiler, also coders, you are human, are much less precise than the machine requires. Current developments in the areas of machine learning and AI could soften this fact. Unclear, will there be less rigid precision necessary in the future? You're, of course, talking to the machine. Brain teaser, I'm not really sure whether it's good or bad. Will there instead be even more demand for communication skills, teamwork, and creativity? For some people, it's bad. For other people, it's good. The main reason we tend to focus on the technical rather than the human side of the work is not because it's more crucial, but because it's easier to do. Never forget that. That is from a book from 1987, and I really dug that when I saw that because it is much easier to go to the technological side and not towards the communication side because there you lost all the information. So guesswork. A crucial part of each software development process is initial and ongoing requirements gathering. Spoiler, the interpretation of imprecise data by imprecise humans. What could go wrong? Brain teaser, if estimation is guessing, then requirements are rumors. That was some major thing that I found on Twitter. I really like that one. An estimate is a lie to serve the delusion that software development is deterministic. It is not. And it is about possibly guessing and working with rumors. Interesting is not if you think that this is correct, but you change the metaphor in order to get a different approach towards the thing that you're doing. You will become much more, let's say, skeptical if someone is guessing and he's telling or he was told some rumors. Then you will try to look at the requirements gathering process completely different, I can assure you. Check your metaphors. Estimating software development is like estimating a walk through a minefield. It's either a short time or a long time, depending. Unreliable data. In many cases, even classic logic is falling by the wayside. Sorry, this is long, but it's very good, by Martin Fowler. Even when different applications access the same data, there is considerable conceptual dissonance between them. Business rules are given to you as they stand, and if you want to change them, you need 67 meetings and 3 vice presidents retiring. They are usually a haphazard array of strange conditions that interact in surprising ways. Their insanity derives from a good reason. Each one is a case where salesmen could close a particular deal by offering some special one-off condition. Do this 1,000 times and you have the complex business illogic that lies in the heart of many enterprise applications. And now you have people who are logical and they go towards programming because this is logic, of course. No, it's complex business illogic. There is a lot of tension there. More wrong metaphors for software development. It's not a sprint. It's not a marathon either. Actually, it's an obstacle course. Again, Andy Hunt. And this is really good because I always thought, sprint is a bad word. Marathon. It is an obstacle course. Unreliable data part 2. Business logic always has a history and is therefore inseparably intertwined with the culture that produced it. Human beings form cultures. Firewall. Every organizational culture is strong. Not all are cultivated, shared, or even openly acknowledged. If you're living in a culture which is not openly acknowledged, everyone thinks, hey, we're the best Scrum company ever, but in fact, you're doing waterfall with Scrummy words on top of it. Let's go for that one. That will be a big problem. According to the theory of Conway's law, the history and sociology of a software producing organization is always shaping its software development process. Any organization that designs a system defined broadly will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. When did you last call in to the different branch of your company? Hey, how are things going over you at your place? Who are you? I don't know you. That is an information silo if you don't do that. If you're not sharing information in your company and multiple structured ways, I would say, that's important. You will be creating software that is full of silos. If you define it more widely, you could also include external customer communication into the equation. If insufficient or simply misleading communication happens in context of a software development process, this fact will eat many designs for breakfast. This is, of course, culture eats strategy for breakfast for software development. Forget your design. It has been eaten. Spoiler, sorry again. All this based on unreliable data. Questionable knowledge. Internal and external factors are influencing every phase of the software development process. Thinking code looks ridiculous is the best sign I'm misunderstanding something fundamental about the pressures that produced it. That is gold. When I saw that, I understood many, many things more about what I've seen when I worked through projects. And if I can tell you one thing, you shouldn't only document your code. You should also document the pressures that produce that code if you're really creative. That is a thing that will lead to the fact that at one point you'll be reading some haphazard code and you will be swearing like I did, and then you go to Git and check who did that, and it was me. And if I would have added what I did there and what kind of pressure was on me, I would be, let's say, more positive about me because, hey, I'm not doing this because I'm a bad person, because the pressure was way up. And I remember the pressure clearly, but not the implementation. And the guys who will be maintaining your code won't know the pressure. They won't remember this emotional thing that you went through because it goes deep into your system. So perhaps you need to document even more, not only your code. Intuition on the customer side in relation to coding or on the own side of things in relation to the customer's worldview can easily mislead you. My experience, what non-devs consider easy to code is hard to code. What they consider hard to code is easy to code. Trouble is certain. Uwe Friedrichsen, really cool guy. Classic education and or training may not be the solution, and that was a bit of an epiphany for me. Education misled me to assume that knowledge is the key to being a good developer. It took me 20 years to realize that good habits are, because good habits will be saving you and not your education. If you have bad habits, forget your education. You're looking into the wrong direction. We humans are victims of a fallacy. We think we are rational beings with some emotions, but in fact, we are emotional creatures with some rationality. Think about it. Look at your own life and try to find some truth in that sentence. Of course, for different people, there will be a different answer. For me, it's clear. I always thought I'm such a rational guy. I'm a programmer man. But then becoming older and older, I realized, I'm on the other side of things, I guess. And now I have to go to some ranting mode. Normal humans, some people might know this text. Anything that is in the world when you're born in normal is normal and ordinary and is just a natural part of the way the world works. Anything that's invented between when you're 15 and 35 is new and exciting and revolutionary, and you can probably get a career in it. Anything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things. Of course, this is Douglas Adams. So, when I thought about coding, I needed to rewrite that. Coding humans. Almost all code that existed in the world when you were born is completely boring. Anything that will be written up until her age of 20 is not really that exciting. And with some luck, someone else, definitely not yourself, may build his or her career on it. All code that will be produced later at last defines the natural order of things correctly and will lead to a better civilization that we do not yet know up until after 3 to 5 years instead of 10. You realize that the existing order was quite all right. Run mode off. So what do we have here? Coders, some observation. The observed civilization by your truth only. SOA, that was the time when I finished my studies. SOA based on web services, also called platform independent CORBA, of course. Then came polyglot programming. No one could ever describe to me how this makes sense if the guys pick their own languages, only each person one language, and then some guys leave and you have big holes into your whole infrastructure. JavaScript everywhere. Remember, this thing was created like in a few weeks in the 90s, and that is a bad idea to put it everywhere. Cloud based on Docker. That, of course, will save the world. Microservices. Let's do some chop suey and do very tiny things and let the complexity go into the gaps between the tiny chops. Of course, that's polyglot SOA. Wait a second, we're going in circles here. Currently, blockchain, that's not so current anymore, machine learning, and of course, AI and ChatGPT. What is easy to miss, and that's important, I'm not in rant mode. This is an observation. All those technologies make sense in the correct context, but in the wrong context, they may lead to multiple nightmares and burnouts. So what I found over a few years ago was hype-driven development, a real cool blog post. Therefore, some hints for study before you live through it. That's a German article by this Uwe Friedrichsen guy. I'm not sure whether it's available in English, but it's really good. That is about the myth of reuse, because that was a shiny thing back in the, I guess, well, 90s, 2000s. OO will save our world. Not really. And he has a really good way of explaining here. Why not? This is the post I mentioned, hype-driven development. Go through it and remember this article when you go to some conference and and you come back and you are very, let's say, optimistic about the next Chinese solution that has been proposed to you. This is some graph from this article. That's how the hype is basically expanding through the internet. You have a real problem and solution. Remember, the real context of a technology is good. Then you have buzz and keywords after some first announcements, first conference talk. Then you have the mania phase. Remember, we are emotional creatures. Blogs, conference talks, Quora, Stack Overflow, enthusiasm. Then some delusion sets in because you went through this before. Then a new paradigm comes up. The disappointment phase starts. At some point, you think, the hype goes up again, and return to normal leads to fear. We've been cheated again, in brackets. And then you realize the return to mean, now we understand what this is for or what the trade-offs are. But make sure that you hit the sweet spot for, you name it, microservices. Otherwise, you have massive accidental complexity. Of course, the current hype is large language models. Let's go for it. Everyone is talking about AI. It would be better to talk about machine learning, but that does not sound so marketing cool stuff type of thing. Also called statistical procedures, very unsexy. Uses big data in order to build LLMs. Hype cycle leader ChatGPT. For us coders, more relevant, GitHub Copilot. So, spoiler. Underpinning databases are frequently non-transparent and critical from a data privacy perspective. The lawsuit that could rewrite the rules of AI copyright. Go to The Verge. It's even old. It's from 2022. A brain teaser. Artificial intelligence can be seen, at least in this context, as a marketing term. It's statistical procedures. Without frills, it would be more appropriate to word hallucinating average automata. As worded by Baldur Bjarnason, he wrote a really interesting and good book about the intelligence illusion. So he analyzed what this current hype is. And right now he's in the phase of publishing the second edition of that book. I really dug that in 2023 on my vacations. I remember quite vividly. And I can put it onto my homepage. When I read books, I create on my Mastodon profile threads, and I have the main thoughts from that book in a long, long thread. I'll put it onto my homepage, promise. So, are LLMs relevant in the context of programming? Probably yes. Are LLMs potentially problematic in context of programming? Quite probable. Why? At least due to two human cognitive biases. As a reminder, the definition, it's a systematic pattern of deviation from norm or rationality in judgment. Individuals create their own subjective reality from the perception of the input. Thus, cognitive biases may sometimes lead to perceptual distortion, inaccurate judgment, illogical interpretation, or what is called irrationality. So, judgment, subjective reality, logical interpretation, and rationality are very much relevant in programming. Problems, automation bias. Science shows that you tend to believe a possibly lying machine more than the best expert. That's in the data. As a human being, you tend to believe more the machine, not the expert. And anchoring bias is a big problem because if the anchor of your thinking has been set by GitHub Copilot pointing some solution to you, your creativity and your imagination shrinks around the anchor. And you won't be producing that creative ideas and stuff and code. So the quality sinks because we have those bugs in our minds, and it's a massive problem if, yeah, basically you tend to believe and your creativity is reduced. Another problem appears on the horizon. Large language models are gradually becoming more and more poisoned. They are eating their own hallucinated data or created data with the hallucinations in it. Data generated by LLMs, including their invalid hallucinated data, are increasingly in the training data itself. The AI is eating itself. Interesting read. Do we, and that's important, whoever that is in a given case, really want automats that are providing the average by definition? Hallucinating average automata. Much more often, excellence is heard by your boss. Produce excellence. I heard that for 20 years. Right now, who wants average code? No one. But, and that's the breaking news for us coders, the modern software engineer in 2025 should better make sure to produce less and less average code. The machine will do that for you. You have to develop high quality code with all the sliders set at the right position in a less stressful, creative environment. That's the goal you should be heading towards. Even if you subtract poisoning, there's a foundational and problematic dynamic when it comes to Copilot et al. The uncomfortable truth. We are not becoming 10x developers with AI. We're becoming 10x dependent on AI. There's a difference. Every time we let AI solve a problem we could have solved ourselves, we're trading long-term understanding for short-term productivity. We are optimizing for today's commit at the cost of tomorrow's ability. You're not going through the Dreyfus-Model. You're short-circuiting it. I'm not suggesting we abandon AI tools. That ship has sailed, but we need rules of engagement. Really need this. You need to read this interesting article by a young programmer. He's 27 or something, has been coding for 14 years, and he does a really good job of explaining why we have problems. We lean on those tools as coders. My reading recommendations, the book Intelligence Illusion, second edition coming out. AI is creating a generation of illiterate programmers. That's the article of this young coder. Is it high time to take ChatGPT offline? A really interesting LinkedIn post out of 2023, and we should go through this quickly. Is it safe to use ChatGPT for your task? You start. Does it matter if the output is true? No. Let's go. Safe. If it matters that it's true, yes. Do you have expertise to verify that the output is accurate? No, it is unsafe to use it. If you have the expertise, yes. Are you able and willing to take full responsibility, legal, moral, etc., for missed inaccuracies? No, then it's unsafe. If it's fine for you, it's a creative endeavor, you just want to generate ideas or whatever and never put that into production, then it's possible to use ChatGPT. But be sure to verify each output word and sentence for accuracy and common sense, whatever common sense is on this planet in 2025. I have my doubts about common sense by now. And if you think about AI as a tool to improve your efficiency, if you follow this flowchart, there won't be that much efficiency there because you have to check every word. Spoiler, directly relevant and critical, and this is important. The amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude bigger than that needed to produce it. That's called the bullshit asymmetry principle, as stated by Umberto Brandolini of Event Storming in 2013. Why is this relevant here? Because LLM, hallucinated data, is an innovation that is producing bullshit of a higher order of magnitude, fully automatic and cheap. And therefore, hallucinating fake news average automated, created by us coders. And that's deadly. We have an information pandemic by now, not by now, but even many years ago. Too bad the latest update. In March last month, I read an article at the Der Spiegel, German newspaper, has related to this hallucinating fake news average automator. What happened? Russia manipulates Western chatbots for propaganda purposes. I went through this article and translated for you. 3.6 million articles in the year of 2024 are now included in the result sets of Western AI systems and are infecting their answers with wrong claims and propaganda, the researchers are writing in their report. For the study, NewsGuard inspected 10 of the most important AI applications, including ChatGPT-4, Smart Assistant, Grok Copilot, Meta AI, Google Gemini, and Perplexity. This method is called LLM grooming. The study shows that the AI chatbots not only pick up the disinformation floating around on the internet, but are influenced by targeted operations. So, micro challenges. Let's leave the hype behind. What are the micro challenges of software development? Focus on relevant details versus filtering of irrelevant details. Adaptation to a complex and dynamic area of expertise. If something works in a given context, remember my project, like 1 month in my job and everything went fine in time and budget, whatever. If something works in a given context, it is possible that it does not work in a different context. And in a third context, it's plainly wrong. It's a complex field. There are no best practices. If it's complex, there are good practices. If it's chaotic, there are emergent practices. This is Kneffen. You should have take a look. I skipped that because then the talk would have been exploding. Teamwork and communication with all its accompanying dynamics. And remember, if a business guy looks at us coders and sees this, looks interesting, but what is the sprint, says one of the snails to the other. Now they are learning agile. The snails are learning agile. They are sprinting. This is the way people who do not know how complexity feels as a coder look upon us. Never forget that. An example. What is subjectively hard? This is only 4,500 people, coders, being asked. So naming things seems to be the hardest thing. And I can tell you it is. You're creating the model of something that is very messy, of reality. Explaining what I do or don't do. Remember, Dreyfus, the intuition part. You can't put this intuition into clear words. So explaining what I do or don't do is hard. Estimating time to complete tasks. That's guessing, isn't it? Dealing with other people. Well, we went here for coding, not for talking, I guess. Working with someone else's code. They are not so well versed like the stuff that I produce under pressure. And if you under pressure, you won't doing that stuff that you think you're doing. Implementing functionality you disagree with. When I was a young coder, I was, what? Disagree? But over the years, I found spaces and areas where I disagreed heavily. Writing documentation, only 2%. Could it be that they are not writing the documentation? Writing tests, same stuff. Could it be that they are not writing that many tests? Designing a solution. I recently read in a book called Philosophy of Software Design by Austerhout, an interesting sentence. He says, Scrum and agility always focuses on features, and what is lost is the design. Because feature does not lead to design, feature, design, feature. So designing a solution, only 2%. I guess that's hard, but let's go for naming things. The 7 Stages of Naming by Aldo Belchi. That was the best blog post that I ever found about that hardest problem of software development. First of all, the name is missing. I call my class do not know name yet. And the method, don't know. Then you put some nonsense name. You refactor, rename it, preload. Then you are becoming honest. I'm doing something evil to the database. And you see here, your learning is fed back into the code. You basically go for a process of learning and reflecting it in the code. Then you're becoming honest and complete. Parse XML and store flight to database and local cache and start processing. I'm honest. Then, only then, after you're doing your structural refactoring, it does the right thing. Store flight to database and start processing. Then only you express your intent, begin tracking flight. And only then you're at the domain abstraction, monitoring panel at new flight. And I remember reading this magazine in Germany, Java magazine, and there was like in one article towards your best domain abstraction, like on 3 pages. Could it be that it's harder? And that's a long process of learning. And if you're going for a new code base, read through it and then take this graph and try to find some slider where to put it below this graph. What kind of abstraction does your code base that you are now learning have? That's an interesting thing that I learned over the years. If the pressure was really high, perhaps you land here at honest. I'm doing something evil to the database. Good luck with your maintenance team. But if you're, of course, promoted to some other team and some other poor guy will be maintaining your code, that's not your problem. Honest and complete, does the right thing. That's a good part where the good area starts. But if the pressure is really high, it's hard to get to this point, does the right thing. And back then I thought, hey, this is funny, but let's read it. It's crucial to find a good name for your class which reveals its purpose. They are thinking, like, crap, I don't know where else to put in exactly. And this is completely fine because that is a stage in this model. Back then I thought, ha ha ha. And now I think, oh, that's fine. Let's go from there and funnel back your learning into the code. Simplicity, of course, is the thing that you need to change, you need to achieve with good names. Remember our Dreyfus-Model of skill acquisition, the Dunning-Kruger effect? So a colleague came from a conference with this graph, and I really dug it. I do not know who created that. I would really like to know, but I don't know. You have the experience, and you have code complexity. And important, it's subjective. Everyone who reads code has a different perception. So your perceived subjective complexity, if you read code, is put on here. Remember those two models here? You have a novice, you have an advanced beginner, you have a competent, that's the expert or danger. You have a proficient and the master of the trade. So what is important in this? At some point, you have a new guy who joins your company and you think, he won't destroy my code base. So let's get him. And up there, that's the danger zone that you need to prevent in any case. You have to prevent it by mentoring or whatever. People who are in the danger zone, who think they are competent, but are not really, they are still producing massively complex code. And they are here in this danger zone. And you need to mentor them in order to become proficient and expert, because those experts realize, hey, you need to make it as simple as possible without basically sucking all the money from the company. So you have to find a balance also there, slider. We had this graph for a long time on our whiteboard, and at one frustrating moment, I realized what those areas are named. The green area, of course, is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And back then, I realized that is called KIF. And that works, that's called keep it fucking freaky. And in German, it's even working better because KIF is the same as smoking dope in German. So keep it fucking freaky or smoking dope. You need to prevent that by any means. And I see you're laughing, but I'm dead serious. That is the real danger zone. So those were the micro challenges, but we also have macro challenges. IT is becoming more and more make it or break it relevant. Neuland everywhere. We had Chancellor Merkel standing next to Obama when he was basically listening to the whole world. And she said, yeah, the internet is kind of new land, new country for us all. And Obama must have thought, not really, but well, if you think so, let's go. So Neuland is everywhere. This is Uncle Bob in, I think, Clean Craftsmanship in 2021. This is massively important. The 21st century marks the first time in human history that our society has become dependent for its survival on a technology that has acquired virtually no semblance of discipline or control. Software has invaded every facet of modern life, from connecting us in a world-spanning network to dividing us socially and politically. And the US, I guess, is the clearest example of that. Labor shortage is not only foreseeable, but is effectively here, while labor demand is increasing steeply. Every 5 years, and this is crucial, every 5 years, the number of programmers in the world doubles. The implications of that fact are staggering. If the number of programmers in the world doubles every 5 years, it means that half the programmers in the world have less than 5 years experience. And this will always be true so long as the doubling rate continues. This leaves the programming industry in the precarious position of perpetual inexperience. If this only is half true, it means that the average knowledge in the industry is effectively decreasing. Simultaneously, the software landscape is becoming more and more complex and is increasing massively in size, also called attack surface. And Putin knows this. Without software, our society does not function. Software has become the most important component in the infrastructure of our civilization. Society does not understand this yet. We programmers don't really understand it yet either. But the realization is dawning that the fragile foundation of public trust is at risk. And if we as programmers lose the trust, there will be very bad things happening to our business and our way of doing things. No, let's say polyglot programming for sure is gone. It needs to be conservative. It needs to be very structured, very disciplined, ... If it comes to the error-free functioning of software solutions, the expectations of non-IT people is very different than ours. Organic resiliency versus non-organic fragility. Those solutions are not organic. Organic systems have fallbacks. Code, not so much as an organic system that went through like millions of years of evolution. And that is a thought that came up to my mind in 2015. Social media induced velocity is diametrically incompatible with the velocity of a democracy. We need to find not like the big guy who says, that's the way we do it. In a democracy, we find, basically in a whole range of opinions, this one choice that no one really likes, but everyone lives with without starting flame wars or whatever. If you have kids, you should only really watch The Social Dilemma. Tristan Harris, employee at Google, he wrote a paper there and circulated it at Google, a call to minimize distraction and respect users' attention. He got fired over it. He was the design ethicist of Google. He said, hey, we shouldn't grab the attention and put it towards massive amounts of advertisement dollars. And he said one sentence in this documentation that I will never forget. AI does not become dangerous for humans when it overwhelms human strength, but when it overwhelms human weakness. And that was like 10 or 12 or 15 years ago. That is massively dangerous. Everyone is in IT, if he's looking the default way, thinks that when human strength is overwhelmed, we have a problem. No, 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 no. If we can become exploited by our weaknesses, then we are in massive problem. So that has been many years ago, and we're living in this world now. We coders need to manage our approach and living with those facts and shaping them. A TED Talk related to the Cambridge Analytica scandal, Facebook's role in Brexit and the threat to democracy. And this journalist said one thing. This entire referendum took place in darkness because it took place on Facebook. And you can spend any amount of money on Facebook or on Google or on YouTube ads, and nobody will know because they are black boxes. We are what happens to a Western democracy when 100 years of electoral laws are disrupted by technology. Our democracy is broken. Our laws don't work anymore. She stood there at the opening session with all those bosses of the big IT companies, and she was really shaking, but she decided to speak it out. And she said something like, where do you want to stand? On the dark side of things, or do you want to be part in a change where basically democracies will survive? And it has become more urgent than ever, I guess. And this is a joke I spotted on Mastodon, but in fact, war, famine, pestilence, and death, the four riders of the apocalypse, they have a new joinee, and he's called misinformation. That is a massive problem, and we are powering it as coders. So, what's the journey so far? Two statements relating to the technical stuff. That's the tool stuff. You just heard, hey, there's a coder talking about technology, so there must be tools. Yes, let's talk about the tools. With great power comes great responsibility. Spider-Man. And I can tell you, keep your tool as stupid as necessary. AI is way not stupid. Never as clever as possible. Danger zone. Why? December 2021. 3 logging APIs for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lord in their Halls of Stone. Log4j. The whole IT business grinded to a halt. And it was, let's say it this way, humans work by habits. If you have good habits, like agile software development, and something really bad happens, and your bad habits come up and has nothing to do with structured approach of agile methodologies, you have a big problem. You need to create an environment where those good habits can survive the stressors and make sure that the bad habits are not popping up in the worst moment in time, like Log4j. It even reached our German Tagesschau, the news um, broadcasting in television. That was the first time that, more or less the first time that my job went like for a headline there. So that's deadly. June 2021, Craft Conference. Developers are drawn to complexity like moth to a flame, frequently with the same result. Boom. Never forget, if you're producing something with your max brain capability and your phone rings at 2 a.m. in the night, your brain will not be at this state of things. And because of that, you need to create boring solutions because you basically will not be managing this at 2 a.m. Basically, the best scenario would be the phone rings, your boss says, hey, we have a massive problem here. And you say, oh, my code is so boring. I don't even need to wake up that badly and that sweating and full of fear. That's the way you need to optimize your coding. April 2022, Twitter. Cleverness of code is proportional to the confusion it creates. Venkat Subramanian. I simply leave that as it is. It's a perfect sentence. A thought dating back to 2018. I had this, and it's basically like this. Perhaps every software developing company needs a CSO, a Chief Skepticism Officer, in 2025. Professional software development is significantly more than simple coding. This is Andy Hunt's view of software development 25 years after the Agile Manifesto. It is about coding. That is what you thought this talk would be about. It's only a small fraction of professional software development. Learning is central. You have a team. You need to have psychological safety in order to reduce the stressors and be creative and have functioning imagination. You need to manage change. How you're doing that? What kind of work models? What are the metaphors? Is it guessing? Is it requirements or is it rumors? Check your metaphors. You have reward structures in companies. You have social facets. You have a culture that is really crucial. You have executives. Those have impact on your psychological safety. How do you work in teams? People. This is massively complex, and coding is only a small fraction of professional software development in 2025. Technology does not solve problems. Humans do. Spoiler, at least until now. AI, I'm looking at you. Never forget, thought dating back to 2013, the nature of software may change towards the nature of hardware if you do not schedule planned maintenance to mitigate that dangerous dynamic. If software's architectural foundation resembles hardware, if you are outlining the costs of serious renovation. Important. Technology does not solve problems. Humans do. The fundamental assumption of every known labeled, branded, and marketed method, your team is healthy. And that's the point I was heading towards. You're optimizing not towards your code, you're optimizing towards your team that is working in a creative environment with less stressors. And this is something that depicts it quite well. This is German. I will translate to you. No more fun here anymore. No motivation. Too much to do. People are stupid. Everywhere we're having a fuss. Everything is stupid. And then your best friend and colleague says, "Hey, I like you very much." And then you say, "Thank you." And like this colleague who always said, "Hey, hab dich lieb." He said, "Hey, Alex, this is great that you're doing this thoughts talk, but what are the solutions, my friend?" And last year I sat down after quitting my job and created a talk called Solutions for Modern Software Development. And important, those are approximations from this 20 years long journey. And this is what I'm doing as a freelance consultant right now. So you can basically book me with this more stuff about solutions. So what's the core question that I try to answer there? How can we nudge the complex system of software development into directions which do not repeatedly, and I've seen it repeatedly, lead us into dead ends? We don't want to stand there. And as Uncle Bob said, we are the crucial thing running this civilization. Dead ends might be dangerous or deadly. First part of this talk is effectively managing complexity. That's, of course, the code. Effectively managing cognitive load, because that prevents you from being really productive and having your imagination working. Effectively performing human interactions. You're not coding alone. You're not even only doing coding, you're communicating, you're doing all those things in the mind map that Andy Hunt presented to us. So you need to work in teams. And you need to learn how you as a human individual work. That's you. And you got to learn how you are ticking in order to be a good team member, managing your cognitive load in order to produce very maintainable software solutions. And if this sounds interesting, you can send me an email or you can go to LinkedIn and connect and we get into a chat. Would be really great. So thank you for your attention. If I would have spent more time thinking, I would have talked less. Relevant in programming too. Removed all unclarity, let the questions come in. But first, the almost famous last words. I really like that very much. The programmer's credo. We do these things not because they are easy, but because we thought they were going to be easy. But the best thing ever, this library is the one where you can log me in. Unexplained phenomena, software programming. Thank you very much. Here you can find me on my homepage, everything there, like about my two talks. I'm even in the process of putting a third one about for students on there. And Mastodon, here's a description of my new talk and my Mastodon page. And because I know I talk very, very lot of stuff. Basta, Italian again, finito. Thank you.
Very, very nice. Awesome.
Thanks.
Um, Wonderful. Do we want to open it up for questions? Right now
Sure.
we're at about 30 minutes over time. Um, we can open it up to questions, comments. The chat thread has been very active and wonderful. I do know that one person asked they would really love to see your reading list for this talk.
Mhm. It's on the homepage. I can show you.
Okay.
Let's see. Um, I need to open up my browser. Cluck. Just tell me if you're seeing my browser in a second if I pull it over here. No, I need to, let's see. As I told you, this computer is very slow. The new one is resting on my sofa. So, damn it. Here we're at our record store again. Here it is. So, cluck. Here's my browser. Yep, that's my Mastodon page. So let's go to my homepage. I'm really looking forward to the MacBook Pro, I can tell you. So here it is. If you go up here, that's the first of all, let's go to the talks page. The talks page has the upcoming talks, customer voices, and here's the sources. If you go there, every link in the presentation is here.
Oh, wonderful.
Also for the new talk. If you scroll down, um, you will see solutions for modern software development, and then by following those links, you will get a bit of a feeling where I'm heading in my new talk. And additionally to that, here's a reader page. And basically there I documented what kind of books I read that led me to this point in time where I basically presented my thoughts to you. It's IT and software development, it's business related, and it's out of the box. I would say in Germany we call it über den Tellerrand. If you have a plate and you're looking
Over
across
the
the
rim.
plate, you will see the end of the plate, and yeah.
Yeah.
Also here, basically, here, by the way, what is on modern software development? Here is my motivation, my idea, how this developed over the years, and yeah, basically you can read through it. And here's also a German talk from last year. Yeah,
Awesome.
that's my bootstrapping of my consulting business, I would say.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. We can keep
Mhm.
going, but
Yeah.
let me stop the recording.